All right. So thank you for the introduction and thank you all for attending this session as well. And let's just go ahead and take a look at the agenda items for today. The topics we are going to cover have at least one common thread, and that is to help effectively communicate information from your model and drawings between you and your collaborating coworkers, external consultants, contractors, and so very quickly here, phasing will help us show what is existing versus demo versus new in our model. Linking external files will help us incorporate other people's drawings into our model. And design options will help us simultaneously explore multiple project ideas. And lastly, work sharing is what will allow multiple users to work on the same model at the same time. I plan to keep the PowerPoint brief and discuss and demo these topics live in Revit. If you're sitting there looking at the topics and already have a lot of experience with these, I encourage you to still stick around because you'll probably pick up a trick or two, or maybe some validation, or there might be something you haven't seen before. And plus, if you have a trick or something that I missed, feel free to drop a comment in the Q&A panel and I can share it. The other thing, so after our live demo, I'll show you some resources that are available. And of course, today we're definitely going to try to save some time for Q&A. But if you have a question during the demo, please type it into the chat window while you were thinking about it. And then we'll look at it towards the end. And on the off chance that we don't get you an answer right away, as long as you put it in the Q&A panel, we will get a record of that and we'll for sure follow up if we didn't get you an answer live. All right, so let's see what we got here. Okay, so before we jump into that Revit demo, I wanted to give you a quick rundown of each topic just so you're kind of familiar with it. First one, again, is phasing. And this is an absolute necessity for anyone doing a renovation or addition. Basically, phasing is the mechanism that will allow you to easily designate what model elements are existing as well as what is new. And with this, you will also be able to show items you plan to demolish. You can then create as many views as you need to show this information in as many different ways. Most common being your standard floor plan, a demolition plan, and an existing floor plan, which might not be added to your drawing set, but you will see can be super useful for modeling the existing conditions. As I said before, linking files will help us incorporate other people's drawings into our model. If you are familiar with AutoCAD XREFs, you can think of them as very similar to that, especially if you were just linking in a 2D CAD drawing. If you're linking in a consultant's Revit model, it is still very similar except that it is 3D, and you will have a high degree of control as far as visibility of the model and how that model would display in your drawing views. So, and that's going to be critical for coordination and collaboration with your consultants. Design options are great because they will let you vet out several different design directions at once. For example, you might have 2 or 3 different styles you want to see of an awning or an entry canopy or a different furniture layout or even a few different lighting or diffuser layout. The best part about this is you can work on these ideas concurrently with the rest of the project, all in the same file. In other words, this will prevent you from having to do a save as on the file, and you can have several different option sets going at the same time. The other tool here is you can create dedicated views for each option in case you want to do a presentation to the client or other stakeholders just to see what all the options will look like. So when it comes to collaboration in Revit, there might not be any better feature than Worksharing. What this allows you to do is have multiple people working on the same model at the same time. In my opinion, the way Revit solves this problem in such a useful way, and the fact that they did it so early as far as the product life cycle is concerned, is just a major reason that it rose to where it is now as one of the premier BIM applications on the market. So in addition to allowing for multiple people to work on the file at once, and that's the main thing here, you can also use the work sharing capabilities for splitting the model up into user organized work sets. And the work sets are basically just a way for users to organize and group parts of their model in a logical way that makes sense for their workflows. For example, you can create a work set for walls that are part of the core and shell of your building, and you could have another work set for just the interior walls. And it doesn't have to be limited to just the walls. In this example on the slide, you can see the doors and windows that are part of that core and shell are set as well. So I actually worked on a project where we did just this, and it really helped us because we had a team for just the interior and a team for just the core and shell. And with each team using a different work set, we were able to maximize our productivity and avoid a lot of potential modeling conflicts, as you'll see in our demo. One more thing to be aware of is that when you enable work sharing, it will create a central model, and that will need to be hosted on either a local area network or a wide area network or cloud. So when we get into the demo, I'll kind of elaborate on those options a little bit here. All right, so let's just jump into Revit here. All right. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm doing a Revit demo here is to kind of try to work on these, just build these data sets from scratch. So if you're kind of sitting there um, watching, you can recreate anything here. I'm just kind of keeping it very basic and simple. So, if you want to try to do this yourself, you should be able to kind of follow along here, especially if you have the recording later on. So for this, I'm just going to start a new project right here. And as always, we got our favorite plumbing consultant to help us out here. Revit 24, it might be harder to find the default template, but if you click the browse button, I'm just using this default here. I actually have mine renamed, and so the first thing we're going to talk about here is going to be phasing. So what I'm going to do here, just draw on a couple walls, nothing crazy, just put some walls in here. Just kind of tighten it up a little bit here. So I've got some walls in here, and you might not have known this, but these walls, if you click on them, you can see that they actually have phasing parameters over here in their properties. And look at this. This wall is designated as new construction. So what I could do is hover, tab, click all 4 of these and say, you know what? Let's change their phase created parameter to existing. And now they change to show up as an existing wall. Say I put in some new walls here. So maybe we're doing a little bit of an addition. Very quickly, you can see that I was able to distinguish between what's existing versus what's new. And this capability is built into that default template because we have the 2 phases already created, existing and new. And as you'll see, that for most projects, that's going to be all you need. So let's take this a little further here. I've got my level 1 floor plan here, and let's look at its properties. If I scroll down here, the phase, you have phasing parameters for all of your views. Might not have known this, but for under phase, this is set to new construction. That's why everything that I modeled in this view will show up as new until I either click on it and change its parameter, or phase created parameter. It's going to show up as new. All right, but let's look at this. Let's say I duplicate my floor plan here. Let's make a duplicate. Nothing changed, but what if I go to the phase setting here and swap it out for existing? Well, it's kind of like I jumped into the DeLorean and went back in time before the project started, and now all I'm seeing is the existing walls, and they will display as new back then. And the new stuff is not shown. So just as far as housekeeping, I'll go ahead and rename this view and call it existing here, just so we can keep them straight. And I could go ahead and model some more of my existing conditions here. And you'll have to remember that what we did was, yeah, let me rephrase that. So everything that we're modeling here will now show up as existing because the view that I'm using is set to existing. So that means anything that I model here on the existing phase by default. So if I click on any of these items I just placed and we look at their properties, sure enough, phase created existing. So that's why, you know, for every project you work on, you'll want to have a set of existing floor plans, you know, stick it in your template. All right, let's do this. Let's go to wall command. Let's put in some interior walls just for the heck of it here. You can do a search up here, type INT, and just put some stuff in here. I might demo these out later. Just more stuff we have in here, the more fun this will be. It's probably good enough for now. Now, when I go back to my level 1 plan, you can see all my existing conditions here. So the other thing you can do here is maybe I didn't want these interior walls here. You could just click on a few of them and change the properties from phase demolished from none to new construction. And now they show up as demolished, which this brings me to my favorite tool or button in the entire software. And that's the sledgehammer up here. When you select an item, there it is. And you can just go around and demo whatever you need here. Click on it and they go away. Just real quick, when you add things like new doors, they will demo any cuts that need to happen. And you get a condition like this, you can use some of your modification items like the split tool. And just demo out the part that you want to get rid of. So you might be looking at this and saying, all right, well, that's great. I don't necessarily want to see my demolition items in my floor plan, my proposed floor plan. So for that, let's just turn this into a demo plan. So I'll right click on this, duplicate view, make a duplicate here. And I haven't talked about this yet. We have something called a phase filter. So this goes back to all the views. I was saying they have two parameters for phasing. They have the phase setting itself and then the phase filter. So all you do is just change the filter to previous plus demo. The new stuff goes away and we can see what's been demolished. And just for clarity here, I'll the demolition plan. Now, when I go back to my level 1 floor plan, I probably don't need to see the demo stuff. So for that, I just go ahead and say show previous plus new, and it'll turn off anything that's been demolished. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this file here. And I'll just make a quick new folder here. I'll name this so we can easily find it later. All right, so now that we've got this data set built up, I'm going to add a couple quick things in here that will help us for our next topic. Maybe I'll just add in a couple grids here. Nothing crazy. Go ahead and change that to a capital A. Utilizing Revit's functionality that will notice that I switched naming conventions there. So now if I save this, close, let's say that's going to be our schematic architectural model that we're going to send to the consultant. So let's say for a minute, all right, we're going to be the MEP consultant next. What they're going to do is utilize the linking capability of the software to use the architectural model as a background. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. All right, so go to Model New, and I'll use the Systems default template. Comes out of the box again. You know, if you can't find it, it should be right in here. Systems default. Click OK. What I can do is go ahead and say insert link Revit, browse to the model that the architect sent over here. Comes right in, and I'm actually seeing that model. I can check it out in 3D. Looks good. And you'll notice my phase filter is set to show all. So now we know how to use that. Let's just say, let's show previous plus new. Now, if I already had other views set and I had those set in my template, you won't need to do that step. It'll just come and shown like this. All right, so let's go ahead and save this file now. Call it MEP. So what will happen is, as the architects are working on their model, they'll send me updates, and periodically I'll have to go and reload it. But that's only if you're working on the file as they send it. If you know it happened after hours, the next time you launch Revit, this model will update if you've updated the file. So if you need to manually control that, you can go to Insert, Manage Links, just find it and click the reload button. It'll reload right up there. All right, so one of the great things about working with linked Revit files is you have a great deal of control on what you're seeing here. So maybe the architectural model is showing some things I don't want to see. So I can go into my visibility and graphics overrides. Now got Revit Links tab here, and you can drill into the settings for this exact model and turn things on and off, or give them some sort of color or line style override. And in my case, I think I just wanted to get rid of the grids. So we'll scroll down here. I'm on the annotation categories tab, and I can turn those off. So anything that's shown in that model, you will have control over what you want to do. Okay, so the next topic that I want to talk about here is design options. So just as a reminder, this is the feature that will allow us to explore multiple different kind of directions or ideas at the same time. So let's say we're going to be the mechanical designer here, and we'll go to the Systems tab and place, let's say we know exactly where we want our return air diffusers to go. So I'll just put a couple in here. So no matter what, these return air diffusers are going here and here. But perhaps maybe the architect hasn't settled on the interior layout of the interior partitions here, or perhaps maybe we're just kind of trying to decide which layout we want to do best for our supply diffusers. So what I can do here before I even draw them in is go to my design options dialog box and create a new option set. Go ahead and rename it, call it maybe supply diffusers, or whatever the option that you're working on is, go ahead and rename it. All right, now, anytime you create an option set, you'll have at least one option. And I want to work on this option. So what I'll do is say, let's do it edit selected right here. Now, it won't let me touch anything else. Like anything else that I put in here will not be editable. But anything that I place now will be part of this option. So let's do a simple layout here. Just going to put a few in. And then go back to my design options dialog box and say finish editing and close. So when I do that, you'll notice those are displayed, but I can't touch them. You can't modify anything that's part of a design option unless you go back to your design options and say edit selected. So the whole point of this was so we could get multiple options. So let's add a new option here under this option set. So we'll add a new one here. We'll just call it option 2, click on it, and then say edit selected. And when I do that, option 1 disappears. So now I'm ready to kind of work on my second option here. So maybe I've got some sort of other design here. And then when I'm done working on that, I'll say finish editing. But look at that, it went right back to option 1. And that's because it's set as primary. And you can actually switch whichever one is primary by clicking make primary here. But one will have to be primary, so it'll show up in all your default views. Like if I go to my 3D view here, I'm seeing that first option. So one of the cool things that this will allow you to do is create dedicated views that show each option. So I could right click on here and just say duplicate view. And when I go to the visibility and graphics overrides, or keyboard shortcut VV, we now have a tab for design options. For supply diffusers, automatic means that it's going to show whatever's primary, but I can switch this to show the other option. So no matter which option I'm editing or whatever's primary, it's always going to show this option. So that's what will allow you to have multiple views showing each one. So if you want to look at them side by side, you'll have that ability. You can put them both on a sheet, no problem there. All right, so now I'm in my main floor plan here. Let's say as the project is progressing, so you could continue working on whatever you want. You want to work on your plumbing, your lighting, you just continue working on that. And once you've settled on a direction here for your supply diffusers, you can click on the option set here and say accept primary. All right, now we're getting a little alert here that's saying that once you do this, it's going to delete those secondary options and all the modeling elements that are on there. So, you kind of want to be sure, like, all right, I'm not going back. And this other, if I click the first option up here, you're accepting it. So that's what I want to do here. And I don't know if you remembered, but we made that dedicated view set to show option 2, which is going to be deleted by accepting. So it's giving me the option to delete that entire floor plan, which I think is probably a good idea. So I'll go ahead and delete that. Now the option sets go away, and we're kind of back to what you're normally used to working with after we've kind of settled on something. All right, let's go ahead and save that. And then let's move ahead here and kind of talk about Worksharing. That's our kind of next big topic here. So let's go to again. Let's go back to that architectural model. I'll open that up. I'll open. All right. So again, just to recap, so work sharing, again, that's the feature of the software that's going to allow multiple users to work on a model at the same time. So I kind of want to discuss how this works conceptually first, and then we'll circle back and I'll kind of show you what this looks like, here inside of Revit. So I don't know if you remember, I said before that when you enable work sharing and you create a central model, you have to store that central model somewhere. And scenario I'm going to describe, or I'm going to outline for you today, is one where we've got, let's say we've got a local office, Anytown, USA, and we've got all of our users working in the office. That is the scenario I'm going to outline today. So let me kind of draw that up for you. So let's say, right, like here's our office, and the only thing really required is a file server and then a few workstations. So, you have your team of designers working here, and everyone's got their own workstation, and they have to be connected via landline, preferably to this central server, to this file server. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be dedicated. It can just be like your normal project server, right? So as I'm drawing this here, we've got a lot of users here. They're all connected. What's going to happen is the project manager, or if you've got someone who sets all your projects up, project comes in the door, they're going to save the Revit model onto the server. They're going to enable work sharing, and then when they save it, it will behave as the central model. Then, yeah, let me mark that. So let's call that central. When the users come in to work, let's say user A comes into work and they want to work on this project, they're going to launch their own Revit on their own machine, go to File Open, browse to this location here, click a special button that will make a copy on their machine. And that's the file they're going to be working on. That's called a local model. Now, periodically while they're working, they will synchronize their file with the central model. And while they're working, when they click on objects and modify them, the central model doesn't know in real time what they did to it, but there's always this connection. There's a constant communication here. It will check that element out in the database. So if user A is modifying an element and they haven't synced to central yet, but let's say user B rolls in and they've done the same thing. They've opened Revit, browsed to the central model, clicked to create a local copy. One gets dropped onto their machine. That's what they're working on. And they click on an object that user B was working on. They'll just get an alert saying, you can't do anything to this because user A is working on it. So if they need to work on that element, they can send them a note or just say, hey, can you synchronize? Then user A will relinquish what they're working on and user B can work on it. And it just kind of goes like that. And the central model keeps everything nice and organized for you. So you could have tons of users working on this at the same time, and it works great. So that's the scenario I'm going to outline for you next here. But there are other options. This one being probably the earliest one introduced and probably the one most users used to be familiar with, but now there's another place you can store your central model. You can now store your central model on the Autodesk Construction Cloud, ACC. And the only major difference with that is there's definitely a cost involved with the Construction Cloud. There's it's a service. And the other thing, what's great about it though is you'll be able to work from anywhere. You're no longer stuck inside your Anytown USA office. You can work from home, Starbucks, your camper out at the lake, as long as you've got Wi-Fi, wherever you need to work. But we'll say we could do we have and are always happy to do, or more dedicated webcast just on that workflow. But let me outline this one for you real quick here. So what we have here, we've got our model. What's going to happen is whoever sets this file up is probably going to do a save as, put it on your server in a shared location. So let's pretend that this folder I'm working on is a shared drive. They're going to save it here. Sometimes people will designate that it's a central file. I feel like it's not totally necessary because I'll show you how you can tell. So we've done a save as, we're ready to enable work sharing. So what they're going to do is go to collaborate, click on collaborate. And for this, we're going to do it within our network. If you are working in the cloud, you would click on in the cloud, say okay. What that's done is that has enabled work sharing. So the next time I click save, I get this message that says, hey, this is the first time the project has been saved. If you click save now, this will become the central model. If that's what you want, click yes. If no, just do a save as. All right, so I had already done my save as, so I'll go ahead and say yes. That part is done. You'll notice that the save button is grayed out, but not the synchronize and modify settings. That, if you see that configuration, that means that you have opened up the central model itself, which is unavoidable when you create the file this way. So I'll just go ahead and synchronize, but be sure to relinquish everything. X out of there. All right, so let's say you're ready to work on your project now. So like user A, B in that scenario I lined out. what they'll do is they'll launch Revit like we've done, go to Model Open, browse to the central file. Well, look at this. They now have this Create Local button here. Ensure that that's on or checked, because what that'll do when you click Open is it's not actually going to open that central file. It's going to download a copy onto your hard drive into probably your My Documents folder. That is the file that you're going to be working on. And you can tell because it's got your username up there, and you will be able to save this file locally, and you will also be able to synchronize it with the central model. So really, you know, from a typical work, there's really no different here. You know, you could just continue working on this as normal. Start modeling in whatever you need. Maybe I'll go to my wall command here and a few walls in. Refine this as we go. Get some very nice tools when you enable Worksharing. You've got a Worksharing display. You can click on this and see who owns what. Since I just drew those in, I am the owner of those elements. If I had other users working on it, maybe they would show up a different color. But if you click on something that even already exists and you modify it, you're now the owner of that element. The other thing that happens when you enable Worksharing is work sets, which you don't necessarily have to utilize, but when you do this, it's an extra little feature that comes with it. All of the model elements were dumped onto one of two standard work sets, shared levels and grids. So the levels and grids, that's built in. I wouldn't really mess around with that, but everything else got assigned to work set one. And we can go in here and create our own new ones. Let's say I want to do the one for core and shell. And then I want to do the one for interior. And then click OK. And look at that. It says, do you want to make the interior work set the active work set? So I'll say yes. And what's great about that is now you can see that's active. Everything that I place on here will become part of that work set. You can select these elements and you can check their work set parameter here. So, you know, if you had one, well, yeah, these exterior walls probably need to be put on core and shell. So I can do a crossing window selection here, do a filter, clear out maybe the grids, and then shift select the interior stuff. If I go to the properties here, notice they were assigned to work set one, but I can switch them to core and shell. So now let's check out the display settings for work sets. So this will show me that everything has been added to the correct work set. If I turn on the Worksharing display settings there, we can see what they are. We got a little key here. You can see what's core and shell, what's looks like, ooh, yeah, these interior walls need to be switched to interior. So I can do that now. Click on some of these. I don't need to do them all. But you see the doors, those were on the proper work set, but the walls needed to be switched. Here. So you might be thinking, all right, well, that's great that I can have the ability to manually assign these to their own work sets, that kind of seems like a little bit of extra work. What's the benefit of introducing this extra layer of work here? Well, there's some level of control that you can do as far as like visibility and opening the model. And you have a large project, you can set it so you're only opening up the work sets that you need. So that can help load times, especially if there's stuff that you're not even working on that you don't need to see, or if you've got a large site model that you know just kind of you feel like gets in the way, you don't even need to open that. The other one here is we've now got a tab up here for work sets in our visibility and graphics overrides. You could turn things on and off. Maybe I'm just going to work on the core and shell. I could hide the interior stuff. So that's pretty much the main things I wanted to show today as far as work sharing. Let me switch back over here. So I guess second, let's get organized here. All right, so now that we have a really good understanding of what these topics are and how they can help you collaborate, the other thing that these topics have in common is that they are not covered in our standard new user course, but they all are covered in the collaboration training course. I will say that these are some very critical features of the software and for sure need to be introduced as possible to any new Revit user. However, just due to the complexity and time required to teach these topics, it's better just to leave them out of the new user class. So what happens is we have people go through our new user course and maybe they go back to the office, use Revit for a few weeks, and they're ready for more. And this happens all the time. I get students that say, hey Dan, I love the intro course, and that was just really the boost I needed to get going, but I'm ready to take some next steps here. Do you have any more training to build upon what we've already done? And I do have a few classes that I can recommend, but the collaboration tools training is a great next step. It will cover all of the topics that I demoed today, plus a couple other ones, like working with model groups and things like that. There might be a couple other. We'll take a look at that. And the best part is it's going to be in a classroom e-training environment where you can ask questions. I can even look at your screen and help you learn the material. And the best part is it's just a one-day course, so it's a little easier to work into your schedule than the initial kind of 3-day training. All right, so you can find a link to that. Let me show you real quick. It is on our website. If you go to Hagerman.com, you can find it, training and support course catalog. I could get everyone a link, but it's pretty easy to find. It's just a few clicks. Just go to training and support and you can search for collaboration. Autodesk Revit. So here's something I just noticed yesterday. We have it listed as Revit architecture collaboration, but it's for everyone. I think that was in there just as a keyword, but it should say, you know, architecture, MEP, and structure, because it is for everyone. And you can see all the course details here. You can download the syllabus. Yeah, let's take a look at that. So of course you see the phasing, work sets, exporting, linking models. And we do have a couple on the schedule. We have one coming up on February 2nd and March 11th. And those are with me. So you get to take my class. I'd love to have you. Let's go back here. All right. So other resources here. You can check out our website, all the social medias and the blogs. And if maybe you saw some topics here that you wanted to do, or maybe you want to just do some of them or mix in some other ones, just let us know. We can come up with a custom class for you. And then, yeah, always happy to do that. All right. So here is some of my business contact information. So don't hesitate to reach out. One of the reasons I do this is to meet and collaborate with folks like yourselves. And feel free to chat me up via any of these platforms shown. If you want to share some of the cool things you've done with the software, I love seeing that as well. And with that, thank you all very much. And I think let me kind of shift over to the Q&A here. So if you didn't get a chance to ask a question you wanted to, feel free to go ahead and do that now. Let's see.
There was a couple that came in talking about vault. I didn't know if you wanted to take those offline or if you wanted to address those. I didn't respond to them.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. I'll run through here. It looks like we have a good amount of questions. Okay, yeah, so I'll look at the ones that are not. Yeah, and I'll just wait. So I'll give everyone a few more minutes to get these questions coming in. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so I have a question. Well, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, keep these coming in here, guys. It looks like we're getting a lot here. I don't know if we'll have a chance to get to them all before 12, so if we don't get you an answer, we will for sure afterwards here. Let me see, okay.
There's one in here, Dan, that says, coming in fast enough. What do you think the best process is for handling bid alternatives, design options, work sets? I was formulating a thought, but I thought that might be a good one if you wanted to, while I keep answering some of these.
Yeah, I like that one because it's it's kind of like a more general, broad discussion here. I think depending on the size of the alternate, it can for sure be handled. If it's I think it really has to do with what it entails, and the other thing is how much does that part of the project interface with parts of the main model. So if it's like swapping out a material project wide, yeah, I don't know, that one could be a little tougher because it really seems to work well in like isolated pockets of the project. So if you could handle it like not like one big huge bid alternate, but lots of little ones that can be conveyed in your construction documents as that one alternate, you could probably handle it that way. I don't know, but like I said, yeah, I think that, yeah, great question, because it can go so many. I feel like we could talk about that one for hours, depending on what we're doing. Let me see what else we got here. Let's see. Yeah, so it looks like we have a question. Okay, yeah, I'll just give a few more minutes to wrap these. Looks like some of these are more comments than questions. Okay, yeah, here's a question. Do I know why an existing model that is work shared and has been worked on by multiple people all of a sudden has create local copy grayed out when trying to open and get an error message that says it won't work? Okay, so a couple things could have gone wrong here. One, the file, a server could have been backed up. File could have been moved. One of the underlying features of the software is anytime that central model gets copied, it will behave like a local model. The process I showed you of clicking the create new local button, all it does in the background is it just does a copy and pastes that file somewhere else. So if somebody took the central model, copied and pasted it to a new location, and then moved it back, it would now think that it's a local model. It will no longer be a central model. So my guess is I would probably immediately just try to save over top of it as a new central model. That usually fixes it. If not, there could be something else there. The other common culprit being your path is somebody used a IP address path to the server and you're using a UNC path. It's got to be the same. We do recommend the UNC. So those are a couple ideas there. All right, let me see if we got any other ones I can answer before the top of the hour here. Okay, here's one. Should different disciplines work in separate Revit files and use links or use work sets within the same Revit file? This really depends on how your team is set up. So I think this question probably mostly comes up for like an MEP firm. You're thinking, all right, well, can we all be working in the same file? I mean, we all work, in this. We're all sitting next to each other. Our cubicles are just right next to each other. Work in the same file. Well, I guess you could, but the file size could really become an issue with that. I think file size is probably one of the biggest product you're going to run into with Revit. So in that sense, it might be best to separate it out into a different model. That way, your plumbing model doesn't have to have all the mechanical stuff loaded in, all the electrical stuff. Like today I did use the systems file, which does have all loaded in, but yeah, I think you're probably going to be happier if it's split out. Make those models lean and then just link them together. All right, well, I guess if there's any other questions, you can let them roll in. And if we didn't answer one of yours today, for sure, apologize for that. I will comb through the questions if we didn't get you an answer today and be sure to follow up within the next week or so. All right, so again, thanks everyone.